is the Two Marketeers podcast, where hosts and marketing experts Sean Patrick and Lindsay Waugh seek to uncover what makes brands so powerful in how they impact modern society and culture.
Two Marketeers. They've got a podcast. The Two Marketeers podcast.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Woo! Hello.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, we're just clapping. We're clapping our way through the beginning of this episode.
Yay. Just so people know the purpose of the clap, it allows me to see on the sound wave, I see the 3, 2, 1, and then a big line. Then I know that's when the episode has started and I can get rid of all the crap before it.
And there's a lot of crap to get rid of, let me tell you. Let me tell you. Everything before the clap goes right into the bin.
Yep.
How are you doing?
Good. I just drank water too fast.
Oh,
no, Lindsay, how are you doing?
I'm great. I'm not choking, so I'm great so far.
Awesome. Do we even know when this episode is going to air?
This one will probably be January.
Okay.
I think, possibly.
Okay, so it's December 1972, just so you guys know.
Right. Welcome back in time. I'm Lindsay Waugh, and this is Sean Patrick from the past. Okay, let's stop dicking around here. We've got 20 minutes. So
Perfect.
We're diving right into the topic of the day. And so all the time, Sean Patrick and I say to each other, there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. There's too many cooks. Like, you need less cooks in the kitchen. Have you been on a call with so many people? Like, what are all these people doing here? And as we were talking about this last week, we're like, there's definitely too many cooks in the kitchen to do things quickly or to do the right work, or just a lot of people contributing their voices when things need to be done in a certain way. And the question I asked Sean, which is the question I'm going to ask him right now, is how many cooks do you actually need in the kitchen? So I think from a client's perspective,
7.
In an agency, they're like, too many people on the call, too many cooks in the kitchen. But we don't know exactly how many people we need to have there. So it's like, okay.
7. It's 7.
Sean says it's 7. So we are dedicating this episode to unpacking the amount of cooks required in a kitchen so that we can get to the bottom of this burning question.
Are you a cook?
Yeah, and I'm always in the kitchen. So I don't know if I'm supposed to be out of the kitchen or in the kitchen.
Well, I asked because when you cook, like, are you? I thought you used to not.
Oh,
like
you mean
cooking,
like actually cooking food? No.
Yeah, I wasn't being
No.
metaphorical here.
No.
Are you a cook? I was like, that's not true.
I'm one of the cooks in the kitchen, but I'm not a cook in the kitchen.
You're the cook that's drinking in the kitchen.
It's a
Fair?
supportive role, okay?
Yeah, I
That's
am not
support.
judging. But here's the thing. I'm the cook in the kitchen. Ask me how many cooks are in the kitchen when I'm cooking Christmas dinner or anything.
I'm going to guess just you and J-Lore.
My friend J-Lore. I'm not that picky. Anyways, it's me. Get out of my way. And if I need help, I will let you know. I'm not saying it's just alone. I'm just giving the other side of the spectrum, right? I'm the cook. Hey, maybe I need someone to cut something, wash something, prep something. And if they offer their help, which they often do, it almost keeps them happy. I'm almost like, yes, it'll keep them out of my way.
So they don't ask you any more times when you need help or what you need help with.
No, because then I start to snap. I'm like, really? Just do the dishes. So I say that just to say, well, let's be honest, you and I are both one cook in the kitchen, are we not?
Are we moving
Back
to work environment now? Okay.
We're working toward the figurative, not the
We're
literal.
moving back to work environment. And yes,
Yeah.
because we are freelancers or consultants who have worked on our own for quite some time, we are typically the only cook, or at least the head chef in the kitchen.
Yes, I like that. Head chef. I'm going to change my business cards, which I don't have. So I love that metaphor. And I love that you asked. It's not a question I've ever been asked before. How many cooks do you need in the kitchen? You really, at least one, right? You need the head chef. The question is, how many chefs or cooks do you want in the kitchen? Well, that's different. What are we making? What are we doing?
Mm-hmm.
What are their skills? And that's where I'll stop the metaphor. What are their skills? What are they supposed to do? What are they good at? And is this meal something they can help you with?
Yeah.
Is that too harsh? I try to keep it in the metaphor again.
No, it's good. So we know that this theme of this season is creativity crisis. And so we've been talking about constraints that are leading to some of this idea of creativity crisis. Some of the things we've been talking about already are like time, budget, resources. So when we think about an environment in our industry around crisis and creativity, and then we think about the amount of people that need to be involved, what's your point of view on the constraints of time, money, talent, and how many people need to be coming into each scenario to kind of help get over some of those hurdles and make sure that creativity isn't in crisis and that it's something that we can continue to create wonderful work that can thrive?
Yeah. That's me really hard questions. So the question is, I was just like, oh my God, I gotta answer this. How many people do you need? Is that
the
question? Is how many?
Or how do you figure it out? Like, how do you figure out who you need?
I think it's a rhetorical question, and it's an excellent one, because it's not even a question that's asked when you find there are too many cooks in the kitchen. I guess I would say it's about asking that question. How many cooks do we need? And how many of them even know how to cook?
Well, I think typically the answer is more. Like, if you think we don't have time.
As many as possible.
We don't have time. We don't have the talent. Like, we don't have any of that available. Like, how many people do we need to get in here because we're pressed under all of these circumstances? And I think typically how we answer it, not how we answer it, but how the industry answers it, is more people. Like, if we don't have any time, we need more people. We got to get on this. We got to build a team. It's got to be a bunch of people. Everyone's running all the different things. And I think that you and I would actually say less. You need less people.
I agree. And I would say if people train themselves to ask that question as part of the practice, when you feel like, okay, who do we need? In the frame of mind you just presented, right? We need more people because we have less time. You're screwed, right? Because you're just going to want more and more people. You're putting bums in seats, as Lindsay has always said. You're filling the room. We've got a room, we've got an hour, and we need as many bums in as many seats, because that's what the client pays for. It's how many people do you need? You actually need about 2 or 3. I mean, depending on the complexity, you need 2 or 3 subject matter experts of the business in general, right? Marketing, even creative, the creative side of business. I always say 3 is great, 2 is fine. And if it's just me, I got Google. More than that, I feel, especially in this day and age and everything we're talking about, the only other people who need to be there are the people who may learn from it. They may have a voice, but they're just there to join the conversation, ask questions, not come up with ideas, or come up with an idea willing to say, okay, so that was bad. The problem is when there's a whole mix of different subject matter expertise and not experts yet, in a culture where it's not right to tell people when they're wrong.
Okay, what do you mean? How does that fit in? What do you mean?
So if someone quite junior and is, they get a seat at the table, we all wanted that early on. You get a seat at the table, you're uninformed, and it's not the person's fault. It's the scenario. It's you don't have subject matter leaders running this. So it brings up that sort of blanket of mediocrity, because it's just sort of like when you have a bunch of, a million monkeys. Well, no, was it an infinite number of monkeys on an infinite number of typewriters for an infinite number of time will eventually churn out War and Peace. Have you ever heard that one?
Yes. Yeah. So what you're
That's
saying
the
is
thinking.
we don't have, there may be more cooks needed in the kitchen because we don't necessarily leave space for people who need to learn from subject
Yes.
matter experts. Because I think
Yes.
what we would say is when you're pressed under these circumstances of less time, less money, less resources, you don't need more volume of bodies. You need higher expertise, higher experience, and higher precision in getting in there to solve the problem. So instead of bringing 10 people to the situation, maybe you need 3 key people who are just going to dive in and solve the challenge. But what you've said is when we reduce the amount of people to 2 or 3 key people to solve a problem, the tertiary people, like junior resources who may be involved in learning early on, are then kind of cut out of the process. And this is actually a huge issue. So I don't think about this issue often anymore because I don't manage big teams of people anymore. And I don't, like, I am a subject matter expert like you, Sean, and I go in and I solve the problem. Sometimes I bring junior resources with me to help me do it. And there's definitely a learning experience in there, but we don't bring a lot of junior people into the fold anymore because we want less people in the room. But that is creating a big gap. I've heard from a lot of people recently around not training the next generation, even just giving them exposure to be the up and comers. So 15 years from now, they won't have gone through the practice and the experience and the exposure that you and I were fortunate to go through as being
slowly over time,
you know. It's a huge issue. It is a huge issue.
It's kind of, I think you're referring to that sort of hollowed out middle kind of approach. Is now there is actually a phenomenon where this middle management part, the people who actually got really good at doing stuff through practice, is missing. So the people who need the practice are coached by the people who are almost like a step removed from that level, because but when they were doing it, things were very different. So and I think, take it back, it's like, enough. How many cooks do you need? Just enough.
The bare minimum.
And then just after that, it is, and then it depends on your culture. It depends on what you're trying to build, not just servicing your clients. There's a lot of factors. But Lindsay said it. You need a head chef. You look at a well-run kitchen and you see all the different positions. Yes, chef. Yes, chef. Don't get me started on The Bear, my favorite show of all time.
Love
but you see that, and you see that. And I wouldn't say it's the perfect HR example, but it's also the other side of the spectrum that says when there's no structure, when there's no key roles and accountability in that room at that time, no one comes out any better.
The key to what you just said is accountability. So when we oftentimes, when we're brought into these big teams of people, it's like, who's responsible for what? And there isn't the head chef accountable to say, you're doing this, you're doing this, you're doing this. And because we're very experienced, like IMC, so like inter-team leaders, we end up coming in and kind of like being the head chef, telling everyone what their role is. But I think you're right. That is the key, determining that head role and giving that person the accountability and the responsibility to guide the ship or to man the kitchen and make sure everyone's doing their job. But oftentimes I find in these big scenarios where there's too many cooks in the kitchen, the accountability and the responsibility is being kind of passed around and no one's really championing that lead role. So I do agree with you that that is super key.
It's interesting because just by saying that, which is so great and so accurate and so true to making a metaphor apply to a very different situation, cooks is the problem. If I cook, I'm a cook. If I cook like shit, I'm a cook. And it's that idea of like, when you say too many cooks, it's because there's no chef. There's no sous chef. It's the whole experience. This entire team is here to make sure that the end experience is the best experience it can be. And there's a lot of people involved. But those people, depending on what their responsibility is, what their expertise or talent or skills are, may not be the person in that room.
Yeah. So you know what the most interesting thing is, that I'm just going to plug like freelance teams and bespoke teams for a minute, like collective teams coming together. The most interesting thing I've learned, well, maybe not the most interesting thing I've learned, but one of the key things that I've seen going freelance and building teams of people to do work for clients, like almost mini agency teams, but we all don't work for each other. We're all independent contractors. The difference in the quality and the level of responsibility of those teams is accountability. They all run their own businesses. They are concerned about having that client long-term. They are accountable for their own time. They're responsible for their own output, and it better be damn good or you're out of there. Like, everyone is so hyper responsible for their own position and their own outcome that the quality and the experience that comes from those teams is so high because they have that personal accountability attached to it. It's not just that you could lose your job, it's your livelihood and your business and your responsibility.
Wow. My brain's exploding. It's the fine line between, we can all say you need to be accountable, right? Yeah, you need to be accountable. Well, what does that look like when you talk about freelancers or business owners and that sort of thing? We have decided we want to be accountable. Mm-hmm. It's not about taking accountability. It's about wanting that accountability. Yeah. I'm fine, love it when someone else is accountable.
Also, same.
But what we all do, like you said, in those teams that come together, all we want to know is what we are accountable for, and what we're not, and who is. Because in a strong environment, right, in a strong kitchen, everybody wants to contribute what they have to contribute, what is offered. I have created a good experience for you. I cannot be accountable for the things I shouldn't be. And I think this all comes to, you're right, Lindsay, it's a conversation about accountability, and it's not about taking it, it's about understanding it, wanting to be accountable, and understanding where you fit. You throw a bunch of cooks in a kitchen, there's so much competition in our industry, right? How many times have you been in one of those calls where you're kind of so uncomfortable because there's so many politics, right? Have you ever had to have a brief before that call? Yeah. Where you're like, okay, you need to understand this person hates that person. This person, they're about to go what? They're about to, and this person wants that person fight. And you're kind of like, those are conversations I used to think I shouldn't have. And I'm like, I'll have them. I'm a steel trap. It helps me. But back to that sort of asking the question, who even are the cooks? Yeah. Do you know who the cooks are and what their role is? Then the answer to how many cooks is just the right number.
I was going to say, if someone says, how many cooks do we need in this kitchen? I think the answer is ask the chef. And if the chef, and if someone's like, we don't have one, it'd be like, hire a chef.
By the way, this is how much I cost as a chef. Lindsay, you nailed it. There's nothing more to say. Ask the chef.
Ask the chef. How many cooks? Ask the chef.
Oh. Boom! Chef's kiss. Ah!
Literally. Awesome. Amazing, really Lindsay. Great conversation, Sean. Thank you so much. It's an enlightening topic, and one that, we keep coming around and around all the time. How many cooks do you need? How many cooks do you need? So I'm so happy we got the chance to dive into it a little bit.
How many cooks? Ask the chef.
That's all you need to know.
Goodbye, marketeers.
Have a great day. Talk to you soon. Thanks for listening to the Two Marketeers podcast. New episodes launch every 2 weeks.
Find the Two Marketeers podcast on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or wherever you like to listen. And be sure to rate and subscribe.
Listen on our website, thetwomarketeers.ca, or you can ask Alexa to play the Two Marketeers podcast.
Want to keep in touch? Follow the Two Marketeers on LinkedIn or at Two Marketeers on TikTok. We've always got something to share.
This podcast is over.